Bon, bonjour tout le monde. Je suis très heureux d'être ici accompagné du député de Québec-Centre, Jean-Yves Duclos, et de mon collègue Steve Lavoie, député de Beauport-Limoilou, simplement pour réagir à la déclaration de M. Paulus concernant le financement fédéral du projet de tramway. Je dois vous dire que ce matin, je trouve que c'est un petit peu le monde à l'envers parce qu'il y a moins d'un an, les députés conservateurs de la région de Québec, Pierre Paulus au premier chef, faisaient campagne en s'engageant solennellement de retirer le financement fédéral du projet de tramway. Je suis heureux de voir qu'il arrive finalement à la même conclusion que nous, c'est-à-dire que le gouvernement fédéral doit être là pour financer le projet de tramway, comme on y est depuis le jour 1, que c'est un bon projet pour la Ville de Québec, qui va avoir des retombées économiques de 10,5 milliards pour notre région, pour notre ville. Et donc, et la bonne nouvelle par rapport au financement fédéral, c'est qu'il y a 25 milliards sur les 10 prochaines années de financement additionnels qui sont disponibles spécifiquement pour le transport en commun, en plus d'un 12,7 milliards à travers le Fonds pour les collectivités fortes, pour les infrastructures, notamment les infrastructures en transport en commun. À ce chapitre-là, on travaille très étroitement avec la province de Québec pour voir à finaliser ces ententes et, si c'est le souhait de Québec, prioriser le tramway pour que le financement fédéral augmente.
Mais ce qui est demandé ce matin, c'est engagez-vous à financer 40 % du projet.
Oui, bien, on est là depuis le début à 1,44 milliard. Il y a la part de CDPQ Infra qui reste à déterminer, mais le financement tel qu'il est, puis la Ville, la province l'assure, est bouclé. Maintenant, la part du gouvernement fédéral peut augmenter, mais comment ça fonctionne? C'est qu'à partir des fonds pour le transport en commun, le 25 milliards dont je parlais, une fois que l'entente est finalisée avec Québec, que les ententes sont finalisées, Québec peut décider de prioriser parmi ses projets de transport collectif le projet de tramway. Puis bon an, mal an, au cours des prochaines années, la part du gouvernement fédéral peut augmenter.
Est-ce que vous comprenez qu'il y a un certain sentiment d'urgence dans l'optique où les travaux ils approchent?
Bien, c'est-à-dire que le projet va de l'avant et là-dessus, c'est clair, et le gouvernement du Québec l'a déjà dit, le financement, il y a une part qui reste à déterminer si ce serait la contribution de CDPQ Infra, mais le projet va de l'avant. Maintenant, si Québec veut que la part du gouvernement fédéral augmente, quand les ententes seront finalisées, il y a moyen de le faire. Quand on regarde pour le transport en commun, pour les 10 prochaines années, il y a une enveloppe de 25 milliards. On regarde en plus ce qui a été annoncé dans le dernier budget, le Fonds pour bâtir des collectivités fortes, il y a presque 13 milliards pour les infrastructures, notamment le transport en commun. Puis là-dessus, les provinces vont avoir leur rôle à jouer. Québec va avoir son rôle à jouer, à dire voici les projets qu'on aimerait prioriser. Moi, écoutez, on travaille avec Québec. Si la volonté de Québec, c'est que le projet de tramway soit priorisé, ça va nous faire plaisir, certainement.
Mais donc, si le projet là, est à 13 milliards, est-ce que ça veut dire que la part de Québec va devoir augmenter?
Le projet n'est pas à 13 milliards. Le projet est à 7,6 milliards. Et c'est CDPQ Infra qui mène le projet est très clair là-dessus. Il n'anticipe pas de dépassement de coûts non plus.
Puis, si je peux juste rapidement sur un autre dossier, le gouvernement du Québec réclame la démission, pas juste le gouvernement, en fait, toute l'Assemblée nationale réclame la démission de Michael Rousseau, PDG d'Air Canada. Est-ce que vous êtes prêt à aller aussi loin que ça? Bien,
moi, je l'ai dit hier, il y a un examen de conscience très sérieux qui doit se faire chez Air Canada, avec le conseil d'administration, pour M. Rousseau aussi. Il n'y a personne au Québec qui trouve acceptable le genre de déclaration qu'on a vu de M. Rousseau. Maintenant, par exemple, la tragédie a eu lieu dimanche soir. Moi, en ce moment, au-delà de la controverse politique, puis tout ce qui a été dit, mon cœur est avec les familles des victimes, 2 jeunes employés d'Air Canada qui avaient la vie devant eux. C'est que j'aimerais mieux qu'on se concentre là-dessus cette semaine que sur la controverse politique entourant M. Rousseau, bien que, soyons clairs, c'est parfaitement inacceptable. Oui. Merci beaucoup.
Your department after a pretty scathing Auditor General report into the Phoenix pay system. Was that his choice to leave?
Well, the first thing is his decision to leave was entirely personal. It had nothing to do with the Auditor General's report, which wasn't as scathing as you were saying, to be fair. And I'll just take the opportunity to thank Alex Benet for the amazing work he's done, laying the foundations for the transition from Phoenix to a new system, Dayforce. He's really done amazing work, and I think he deserves our thank for that. Thank you very much. Merci.
Michael Ma challenging a witness at the committee today about the possibility that there's maybe not forced labor in China when it comes to Uyghurs and Tibetans. Okay.
He's clearly completely uninformed.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to say about Michael Ma's comments regarding the forced labor and the Uyghurs, Mr.
Oh, sorry. That would have been a more interesting response, I think. Well, either he is deliberately uninformed or he is deliberately blind to the reality. what is happening right now in the Uyghur in terms of the human rights violation and forced labor. It has been established, and I think it's high time that those who are willfully blind open their eyes. Otherwise, they're peddling a message that is not consistent with reality.
Do you think that he should be asked to apologize for it?
I absolutely think that he should apologize for it, particularly to the Uyghur community and for those family members and individuals who have loved ones that are trapped in that situation. But more to the point, as a Liberal caucus member, I expect that he step up to the plate and hold the government to account to take action. Canada and Canadians, I think, pride ourselves in Canadian values, and that's fairness and justice. And I don't think Canadians want to see forced labor in producing products as part of the Canadian economy in any way, shape, or form.
Thank you very much.
All right. I think the other thing that would be really important to ask is MP Ma, where did he get that information from? Who is telling him that information? And we need to challenge the source of that.
Thank you very much. So you've seen the video, you know what happened, you talked about it in QP. What are your thoughts on Michael Ma really questioning this witness repeatedly about witnessing the human rights abuses and whether they even existed, this forced labor in Xingang, China?
Well, I think the Liberal government needs to clarify its position. You'll remember that Parliament adopted a motion recognizing that a genocide, including forced labor, was taking place against the Uyghur Turkic minority in Xinjiang province in the PRC. The Government of Canada, in response to the adoption of that motion in March of 2021, imposed sanctions on 4 PRC individuals and an entity in Xinjiang in order to demonstrate the government's commitment to combating gross human rights violations, including forced labor. Fast forward to today, it's not clear what the Carney government's position is. You know, for example, they first said that they had raised the issue, that the Prime Minister, in his bilaterals in his recent trip to the PRC, had raised the issue of human rights. That he had not raised the issue of human rights, and then they backtracked and said that he did. And now we have a Liberal MP in committee intimating that forced labor has not taken place in Xinjiang province against the Uyghurs. So the government needs to clarify its position. Does it still assess that Uyghur forced labor has taken place? Will it raise those issues proactively with their PRC counterparts? And finally, will the sanctions against the 4 individuals and 1 entity remain in place? And I think the Prime Minister's office needs to clarify all 3 things.
So it's raising questions for you about whether this is actually not just one lone MP who's saying this, but it's raising questions about whether the government believes a very similar position.
That's right, because they've not been clear about whether or not human rights were raised with their Chinese counterparts in the recent trip that the Prime Minister took to Beijing. Initially, they said human rights were not raised by the Prime Minister. Then they later said they quote-unquote retabled a response saying that he did raise it. Now we have a Liberal MP just days after saying that, intimating that forced labor has never taken place. I think the Prime Minister needs to clarify what exactly is the Government of Canada's position. Do they still assess that human rights abuses against the Uyghur Muslim minority are taking place? Do they intend to uphold, to raise these issues with their Chinese counterparts? Do they intend to enforce the provisions in CUSMA, the Canada-US-Mexico Free Trade Agreement, that requires Canada to interdict shipments, imports of products made via forced labor from Xinjiang? And do they intend to keep the sanctions in place? These are all very important questions, not just for our bilateral relationship with the PRC, but for our relationship with the United States. CUSMA requires the Canadian government to interdict shipments from Xinjiang that contain products made from forced labor. But if the government no longer assesses that forced labor has taken place, that forced labor is taking place, then they're not going to enforce the sanctions and enforce the importation of products using forced labor. So these are very relevant questions.
And if we take his questions and his comments just in isolation, the fact that he's saying this is hearsay and questioning a witness who says she's been with Human Rights Watch a lot, who has witnessed this, what does it mean to you that a Liberal MP is calling this hearsay the forced labor in Xinjiang?
I think it's very concerning. There have been many, many reports from reputable organizations such as human rights groups, such as investigative journalists at the Wall Street Journal, and other reputable news organizations that have documented gross human rights violations taking place in Xingang against the Uyghurs. So I don't think there's any question about whether or not this has taken place, and I think it's very concerning that Liberal MPs are now starting to question this evidence.
And should he have to apologize for it or face any type of punishment, you think, from the government, if it turns out that he is saying things on his own and the government has a different policy?
Well, I'm less concerned about what the position of one backbench Liberal MP is and much more concerned about what exactly the position of the Prime Minister is on this. And as I said, it touches on Canada's longstanding position that gross human rights violations have taken place in Xinjiang against the Uyghurs, that sanctions have been put in place against 4 individuals and 1 entity in Xinjiang, and that we have a commitment to prevent products made using Uyghur forced labor from being imported into Canada, which has a direct impact on the Canada-U.S. trading relationship and on CUSMA.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you. So tell me a little bit about Michael's comment. Do you think that this is part of the Liberal government's policy, or is this one individual saying that forced labor is just hearsay?
I wasn't in the committee, and so I haven't heard his statements, but I do know that the Government of Canada's position has not changed. The Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister have raised the issues of human rights on their recent trips to China. We will continue to do that. We're aware the world has changed. We're aware that we're recalibrating our relationship with China, but we have eyes wide open. We will continue to raise issues of concern and challenge them on areas where we disagree, but we will continue to recalibrate as we try to find the best way to move ahead for Canadian workers and Canadian industries and Canadian interests.
You may have just heard Michael Chong, who was saying that Ma's comments questioning a witness about the fact that this forced labor in Xinjiang is hearsay. He says this does raise a larger question about, is he speaking on behalf of the Liberal government, and is the Liberals' policy strong enough? So when it comes to forced labor of the Uyghurs, where exactly does the government stand?
There has been no change in our position. We will continue to stand against forced labor everywhere. We'll continue to have the strongest free trade agreements where we will enshrine labor rights that will protect labor in Canada as well as labor around the world. We will have the highest standards when it comes to making sure that Canadian industry is following all our Canadian laws. Plus, we are not engaging in supporting forced labor anywhere.
So what happens with Michael Ma now, given the fact that he was saying this is just hearsay and it's not happening?
I didn't hear that. I saw one clip on social media. I think he was questioning a witness and wanting to know what the witness knew, and I will give him the benefit of the doubt until I actually have seen what he said.
Just to clarify, are you saying that that the Liberal government does recognize that there is forced labor against Uyghurs in China?
We have had no change in our position. What we are against forced labor anywhere and everywhere. This House has spoken.
But do you recognize that there is that the Chinese government, the PRC, is forcing labor on certain
We recognize that the
population?
People's Republic of China has different labor standards than we have in Canada. We know that. Everyone knows that. And we will continue to ensure that Canadian corporations follow all Canadian laws as well as international laws to ensure that there are no products with forced labor in Canada.
So should Michael Ma have to apologize or explain his positioning and where he got his information and why he was questioning the witness?
Michael Ma is a member of Parliament. He can question a witness to get to the truth, and that's his job. That's our job as members of Parliament. When we're at committee, we ask questions. We're not giving answers. I didn't hear in the short clip that I saw any answers. He's asking a question, and he should ask questions. Everyone should. That's what we do. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Je vais dire parce que le Bloc dit de la foutaise. Pouvez-vous vous expliquer un peu?
Bien, je pense, d'un, ils sont en train de faire du capital politique sur une tragédie. La tragédie aérienne, à ma connaissance, il y a toujours des gens à l'hôpital. Ce que M. Rousseau a fait, c'est grave. Il aurait dû s'exprimer en français. Je pense qu'il y a un examen de conscience qui s'impose de sa part. Mais de là à accuser le gouvernement Carney, même Marc Carney, d'être à l'origine du fait que, ou le gouvernement du Canada, d'être à l'origine du fait que M. Rousseau ne puisse s'exprimer en anglais, c'est de la foutaise.
Mais il dit que c'est des milliards de dollars qui ont été investis pour promouvoir l'anglais.
Je ne sais pas d'où il sort ça, Mario. Honnêtement, c'est Mario, on le connaît très bien, mais tu sais, il sort ça de nulle part.
Ce sont les chiffres qui sont de la foutaise, juste pour être clair?
Bien, on a investi 4 milliards de dollars dans la stratégie francophone, hors Québec aussi, parce que c'est notre devoir. Moi, dans le contexte du comme ministre aux langues officielles, j'ai une entente avec Québec, justement, pour donner de l'argent pour que les gens puissent apprendre le français comme langue seconde. Dans le contexte de notre relation avec Québec en immigration, on leur verse quasiment 1 milliard par année pour la francisation. Donc, on a tous notre responsabilité fédérale, provinciale aussi, mais je pense que c'est ridicule son affaire.
No, sorry.
Sorry.
The meta block on news, Canadian news specifically, is still in place. And
Sorry,
right
the what?
now, the block on Facebook, on Meta, of
Sure,
Canadian
yeah,
news,
yeah,
that one is still in place. And what's been replaced by actual news on Facebook and Instagram is largely fake news articles, fake news information that's all been created. Are you concerned at all about that fact that now Canadians on Meta, other platforms, are really just seeing fake news? And do you think at all it's a threat to Canadian sovereignty when that is the news that's being replaced?
Look, absolutely. People people share stuff on the platform that isn't accurate. I think platforms, first and foremost, have a responsibility. You are seeing court cases in the U.S., for example, recently, based on state consumer laws, which I don't think you should have to rely on state or provincial consumer laws to enforce basic elements of responsibility on social media platforms. This is a body of law that's evolving, but clearly it is making a growing number of Canadians question, including lack of trust in classic broadcasters, and it's creating an atmosphere that is very unhealthy.
Do you think that it should be a priority for the government to try to remove this ban on news on Meta sites?
Look, I'm not going to talk about any discussions that are ongoing. This was the choice of Meta Facebook to do it, not the Canadian government's. What we are asking from platforms is for them to pay their fair share. It's an issue of fairness. There is also issues in and around AI cannibalizing news information and spitting it out in a different form. Those are issues probably vested in copyright, but also in the fair use of information, which if courts apply the law properly, we have a Copyright Act that works. But again, this is something that's happening rapidly before our eyes. I'm not going to pretend to have all the answers. We want, first and foremost, those that navigate online to do so in a safe social media environment, including especially young kids, and it's stuff that we're looking at intensely.
Croyez-vous que M. Rousseau doit démissionner? M. Miller, vous êtes ministre des langues officielles.